welcome to my channel, Edible Thoughts Makes. My name is Stephanie and I'm coming to you from a beautiful false spring day here in Minnesota where I live with my husband and our 2 young children. This is episode 140. It has been a few weeks since we last had a project updates video. I had released a video last week talking about 2 variations of a pattern, and so I'm not going to touch on that project today. I'll just refer you to that video. It was a cowl that I was working on, and I had made some changes to the original pattern, and I discussed why I made those changes and things like that. So today I do have several knitting projects to share with you. I'm going to focus on the finished projects that I have, and maybe I'll share one work in progress, but I also have I think like 4 or 5 books that I've read since the last time we chatted, so I want to make sure I get to touch on those as well. If you are new here, the way I usually organize my videos is I have an intro welcome section, and then I go into finished projects, which may start out with what I am wearing, which may be a recently finished project, but it could also be something that I've made in the past. And then we go into works in progress, and then eats and reads, where I talk about maybe recipes that I've tried or things that are just part of our regular rotation. And then I talk about books that I have read, and then there's a food for thought section at the end where I share something that's been on my mind, in my heart, and sometimes it's related to making and sometimes not. Sometimes there's a question posed for you. Sometimes there's a homework assignment, which if you've been here for a bit, it's not really like an assignment. Nothing's ever mandatory. I do not like to tell people what to do or how to do things or anything like that. I just share what I have learned, my experiences, my thoughts, and you are always welcome to participate in the conversation in the comments below if you so choose. My videos include closed captioning, so you can click on that CC button. YouTube allows you to adjust the speed of the video so you can make it go slower or faster. In the description box below this video are notes that provide you some links to things that I talk about. So designers, makers, things like that. I will try to link to their websites if they have them. I also use Ravelry for my projects that are knit and crocheted, and so you will find that titled specifically Ravelry project pages. And then I do try to share as much information as I can here as another way of learning in case Ravelry is inaccessible to you, or just as another way of seeing projects in motion, I guess, versus like a photo or in text. I think that is all of that kind of intro stuff. I feel like so much has happened in the last 3 weeks. And weather-wise, we've been all over the place. We did even have a snow day where school was canceled because of the heavy snow and poor traffic conditions. And then several days later, it was like 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So a lot of it melted, but not all of it. So areas where there were snowbanks, there's still like muddy snow in those areas, which is not very attractive. We had built a snowman in the front yard, and then over the several days, it started to melt. And it was just so funny because we went from having like eyes on it to then putting sunglasses on it, to then putting like a sun hat on it, and the head just slowly melted away. And I had made a scarf for it just using like polyester fleece fabric that I'd cut in a long rectangle and cut some fringe. And so we had to move that scarf down as it slowly melted, but it was just so funny, and it was really fun. So I think let's get started with finished projects. Actually, before we jump into finished projects, I'll share with you what I'm wearing. This is the Avenue Vest by Tori Yu. I tested this pattern for her sometime in 2024, and it comes in a V-neck and a crew neck option. It is meant to have positive ease. There are these deep armholes, which makes it great for layering. I took some creative license with this version. I made it marled and striped and color blocked, and I really love how it turned out. I did talk about this in a previous video, and I forgot to mention in the intro section, for all of my projects that are on Ravelry, I do include like a note entry or something. I don't know what you call it. I can't think of what it's called right now, but a note for when I talk about it as a work in progress and as a finished project. So which episode I talk about it, and that just makes it much easier to find that information. So I don't know off the top of my head which episode I talked about this particular vest in right now, but I will link to it in one of the corners here. But also if you are able to go to the Ravelry project page, it will mention which episode I talked about it in there as well. The yarn I used is Pearl Soho Linen Quill held double throughout. And I held this, I think this is dark denim, this navy with the different colors throughout, and I just swapped them out when I felt like it or when the color ran out. And then I went back later and duplicate stitched some bright rectangular blips throughout to break up any sections that I felt like needed a little bit of a color break in that section. I think it is really fun to wear over a denim shirt, a flannel shirt, although with flannel shirts I've decided that it's too busy unless it's one that isn't plaid, but I think all my flannel shirts are plaid. I think it just ends up, there just is too much going on. So with a solid denim shirt underneath, I really like that. I think a white button-up shirt would look nice underneath, or just basically any solid color like a linen button-up would look nice. I've worn it with a turtleneck underneath, just like another thin long sleeve wool shirt underneath, and that has all worked out really well for me. So I do wear this on rotation pretty often since I finished it last year. I think it was in the fall. Can't remember if it was fall or winter, like November, December. It must have been November, December. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I have worn it several times. I feel like this is a very versatile piece, and because I knit mine in linen quill, which is a fine Highland wool linen alpaca blend, it is not super heavy. It is pretty breathable, and even though it is held double to be at like a DK worsted weight, it's not like a super dense fabric, and I feel like it keeps me warm but not overheated. And the deeper armholes also make it really easy to layer without any potential bunching in the armpit. I will say that this one I tested, there was like a slight armhole adjustment when the pattern was actually published, because some people found the armhole depth way too deep. I'm not sure if this is in frame here, but this is pretty deep. And I think there was a slight adjustment to make it just a little bit less deep, but that is something you can adjust yourself as well. I have not made another one since the pattern was released, so I don't know what the changes are. I haven't looked at the comparisons, but you could easily adjust the armhole depth depending on what needle size you choose for this ribbing, and depending on how many stitches you pick up. And you could also just adjust the fabric length for this top section where you are knitting flat before joining in the round. It is knit top down. So there are lots of ways to adjust it on your own, but I know Tori went back and made a slight adjustment in the pattern just to accommodate that armhole depth based on people's feedback. So now on to finished projects. The first one I'm going to share with you is one that I actually made summer 2024, and it is the Rift Tee. I love this so much. It is so different than the actual pattern in the sense that the original pattern is knit all in one yarn, one color, and I had a few different colors that I wanted to use, and I was a little bit limited because I think I had just like one skein of each or even less than one, and so I just went with what I wanted to do, and I played around with stripes and color blocking, and the short rows created beautiful shapes and areas of color throughout, but that is not what I wanted to talk about. I got carried away. I brought this back out because over time the neckline had stretched out a little bit. This yarn is Pearl Soho Plein Air, and it is a, I believe, cotton merino blend. I'll put it on the screen here. Oh, and again, I forgot to mention, anything that I either say incorrect or need to add more information to, I will generally put it on the screen here, but I do forget sometimes or miss it in editing, and so I just do my best. So what was I saying? Oh, I brought this back out because I wanted to finish the neckline. When I first finished it, I was debating whether or not to add an I-cord edge to the neckline, just because I could easily see it being stretched out, but I thought, oh, I'll just wear it, see how it goes by the end of the season and see how I feel about it. Well, it definitely did stretch out, and I was feeling like the raw edge just needed a little something, and so I added an I-cord edging to it, and I really like how it looks. I just feel like it looks so much more finished and polished, and it definitely adds a little bit of structure. So I knit mine on US 8 5mm needles for the main fabric, and I used a US 8 to pick up for the neckband. I do include my stitch counts on my Ravelry project page if you're interested, but it would just really differ depending on how you want it to fit, what size you picked, so many different things. So I'm not sure it's super helpful, but I did pick up a 1-to-1 ratio, I think, along the back. And then for the V portion, I don't know if I picked up every stitch or 2-to-3 ratio. I can't remember. I think I had to try a couple of times just to make sure I got it the way I wanted it to sit, but I really like how polished it looks. I will insert a picture of me wearing it here on the screen. I just feel like it gives it such a nice tidy finish, and the edging colors look really cool. I feel like on the back it kind of continues the striping sequence, and on the front I like how the color matches up with this short row shoulder shaping and the little bit of stripes here, and then how it still has some contrast on the other side. This is the Rift Tee by Jack Cieslak. I think it's really cool that we are able to modify garments and different projects to suit our needs, to fit our bodies, but also to go back and make adjustments over time if we're able to. I mean, it's not always as easy as just adding a neckband or a neckline, but it's so nice to be able to do that. I think it just adds, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a skill, a tool that we've developed over time, and to be able to apply it to makes that we've made in the past so that it even better fits how we want them to fit, or even if our preferences change over time. I think that's just really cool to be able to keep modifying or keep adjusting things that we already have to continue to have them meet our needs. I mean, that's just so cool. Have you done something like that to any of your projects recently, or maybe it's something that's on your to-do list? I feel like our to-do lists are always never ending, and not necessarily in a bad way, but I have found that there's so much satisfaction in being able to go back and do things like that. Like I have adjusted some pants that I had to redo the waistband because my elastic was either too long or too short at the time, because I feel like that's always a little bit tricky because, you know, there are tricks to figure out how to make it fit, but depending on the type of elastic, it doesn't always stretch the same way. Anyway, so I've gone back and fixed those in, I think last summer or last fall, and so that was really satisfying. I have frogged projects that just weren't working for me anymore, and that felt super satisfying. I just feel like being able to empower ourselves to adjust our makes however way that may look is just, it's so satisfying. So satisfying. We are going to move on to this little stack of finished projects here. So excited about these. Let's see, what should we talk about first? I think we'll talk about the one that I shared with you last time. I don't believe any of the other three were shared in my previous episode. That was like, what, 3-ish weeks ago? So here are my socks. Aren't they so cute? I think the last time I shared them with you, I had not done the heel flap and gusset yet. So these are knit top down. And this is the Summer Lee Colorwork Cuff Club, and this is the chart for February. I did modify it. I think the original one uses 4 or 5 colors. I just used 2, and the yarn I used is Pearl Soho Fine Print, and this yarn was given to me as part of the Fall 2024 new product launch. This is a 75-25 superwash wool nylon. It is not merino, but it is as soft as merino, and I have found it to be pretty durable. I knit a pair of socks for my daughter in the fall, and she wears them probably at least once a week, and there's some slight pilling, but otherwise super durable. So I knit these with pink apricot. Oh dear. I should probably pull up my notes so I know what I am talking about. I get carried away and then I forget to reference my notes, and then I get stuck because I don't know what I'm talking about. I picked the adult medium size for these. I find myself to be kind of between the adult small and adult medium for sock patterns, and I used a US 0, which is a 2mm needle for the ribbing and for the main fabric, and then for the colorwork portion I used a US 2, which is a 2.75mm. This yarn is a 4-ply, and it comes in 218 yards for 50 grams. So I consider it a light fingering weight yarn, and I've been playing around a little bit with adjusting my fabric density for socks. So like using US 0 for light fingering weight yarn, US 1 for like standard fingering weight yarn that's closer to like 400 yards for 100 grams versus something that has more yardage for 100 grams. And yeah, I like it. I like the fabric density. I'm not sure if I'll always do it on a US 0, but I do like how these ones turned out. I think it's a great way to be able to adjust the sizing too. So if it's going to be a little bit bigger in stitch count, I can always go down a needle size and that'll shrink it up a little bit, but also make the fabric even hardier to wear over time. The colors I used are pink apricot and candy apple. And I used 54 grams of the pink apricot, which is this peachy pink color, and then 8 grams of the candy apple, which is this beautiful bright red. I think this motif came out really well. I did have to modify the bottom portion of the chart a little bit just because I was only using 2 colors, but I like how it turned out. They fit really well. I have no problems getting this over my heel. If you are new to color work in socks, the biggest thing is making sure your floats aren't too tight because you need to be able to fit it over your heel. And then once you have floats involved in socks, you lose some of the elasticity because it can only stretch so far with the floats. Compared to areas without floats, you can stretch it a lot more. So I kept my floats nice and loose. I don't know if I caught any of them, meaning there aren't like super long floats. I don't think I did. Pretty sure I didn't. It doesn't look like I did. But that's the inside of my sock. And yeah, I really like how these turned out. I think I modified the toe. I think I did a rounded toe instead of a wedge toe. A wedge toe would go every other with a decrease round and a knit even. And I did alternating the decrease round with the knit even until I had 20 stitches on top, 20 stitches on bottom. And then I did a decrease round every round until I had 10 stitches on top, 10 stitches on bottom, and then grafted that together. So I knit the majority of it on 9-inch circulars, and then I did my heel flap on double pointed needles while the inset stitches were held on the 9-inch circulars. And then once I got to the gusset, I knit back onto the 9-inch circulars. And then once I got to the toe, I switched to a 32-inch magic loop and divided up my instep stitches with my bottom stitches on the 2 needles for magic loop. So these are those socks, and I love how they turned out. The next finished project I'm going to share with you is another pair of socks. And these I have knit, I started them with the start of Denise of Earth Tones Girl, her knit along that is I love books and sock knitting. I will put the hashtag here on the screen so you can follow along. I believe she's mostly running it on Instagram and maybe Ravelry. Don't quote me on that. You'll have to check her socials to find out all the information on that. It runs from March 1st to May 1st. And again, all the details are on her social media stuff. So check that out there. And here are my socks. These are so much fun. I cast on 60 stitches using US 1 2.25 millimeter needles, and I generally like a 60 stitch sock. I prefer my socks to have more negative ease than not, and I just find this to be pretty comfortable. And with this sock yarn, I used a whole bunch of different colors, and they should be all 75-25 superwash wool nylon blends, and I think they are all light fingering weight, like either 437 or 463 yards for 100 grams. Some of them I didn't have tags for, so I'm guessing, but they feel about that. They're all 4-ply yarns. And in total, I used about 48 grams of yarn. I did an Old Norwegian cast on for 60 stitches on top, and I did Knit True Purl 1 for 15 rounds. For the leg, I did 3 stripes of 6 rounds per stripe. And then I did a heel flap. And then I tried a different heel, which is a French heel turn. And I did that part on a US 0, which is a 2 millimeter needle. I had talked about in a previous episode that I feel like where I usually blow out my socks is on the heel. And so I thought if I change the fabric density just on that heel portion, then that should help. So I changed that fabric density there just to a US 0, which is a 2 millimeter needle. And I feel like it came out very tidy. I have no holes in the turning areas, which sometimes happens. This French heel turn, I'll link to in the description box below the video. The turns, instead of like you slip a stitch to like close that gap, it actually uses the German short rows. Yeah, German short rows, because you do that double stitch, like take the yarn and pull it to the other side technique. And I feel like it came out really tidy. So that was something fun to try. And then I continued with the gusset, the foot, And on this one, I also did a rounded toe. And these socks I knit inspired by a book cover, which is the Ban This Book by Alan Gratz, and I'll put a picture of that here on the screen. It was so much fun to match it to the book cover because the way the book cover is, there are all these books that are stacked up in a locker, and they're all these saturated, vibrant colors, and it was just so much fun to be able to pull out a bunch of different yarns that I thought matched well. So this teal color on top is supposed to be like the lockers. This yellow heel is that sign, and then all of these are the books, and then I finished with the locker color on the toe. It's not exactly in the same order as it is in the locker, but yeah, I had a lot of fun with these. And I don't know if there's anything else to say, but I really like how these fit. I think they're so cute. Again, they are 6 round stripes, and I don't think there's anything else to say about them, but I really, really like these. I'll talk more about the book in the Eats and Reads section. The next finished project I'd like to share with you today is the Mini Mock Neck Tank by Jessie Made Designs. I believe this is my 4th one of this pattern. Each one I have knit slightly different. I think I cast on the same size for all of them as the adult small, but I lengthened all of them. Some of them I did increases on the sides. But yes, I've knit multiple of these, and I've really enjoyed wearing them as underlayers. So I don't plan on wearing any of these tank tops, these wool tank tops, as ones for warmer weather, partially because for me, I don't like to wear like full wool or any wool, really, if it's going to be really hot, because it just feels prickly and I just don't like it. But I do really like these as underlayers. So here is my mini mock neck tank. This is a beautiful olive green color. There are creases in it just from being folded, but this yarn is the Farmer's Daughter Fibers Bighorn Sock Base. It was the This was the February 2025 Sock Squad by the Farmer's Daughter Fibers. It is a monthly yarn subscription, and I will have a picture of the journal here on the screen with the artwork by Landon Shee that each month is inspired by. And so this one was Luna Moth, and it came with like a peachy mini. This yarn is a light fingering weight yarn, 75%, 19.5 micron superwash merino and 25% nylon, 463 yards for 100 grams. Mine started out at 103.23 grams, and I had 0.86 grams remaining. Again, I do lengthen it from the pattern, and I did do some increases on the side. So the pattern itself is actually pretty cropped with no waist shaping at all, and so it lists for adult small less yardage, but again, I made modifications. So I didn't change anything for the back or the front, so you do cast this on from the top, start at the shoulders, knit the back flat, pick up from the shoulders, knit the front flat, join in the round, knit all the way down. The armhole edging is knit as you go, so there's no picking up afterwards. The neck band you do pick up and knit a ribbed collar. There are different lengths in the pattern, but again, that's easily adjustable. And so I picked a size that gives me about 5 inches of negative ease at full bust, no negative ease at natural waist, and then of course, the longer I knit it, the more negative ease there is as I go. And I don't want something super tight or has a lot of extra negative ease the farther I get from my natural waist. So after, I think, 50 rounds, I did do 2 increases per side. I'm not sure if it's even very visible, but I did do increases on the sides. And then I think I was able to get to 83 rounds total in the body before I started my ribbing. And I was just weighing my yarn in the beginning and at the end of a round, so I knew how much I needed to save to do a bind off. I did do a sewn bind off, so it's very stretchy. And I did that on the top neckline as well. I did knit my neckline part of the way through. I just pulled from the center of my cake to knit the neckline, and I didn't cut any of my yarn. And so that worked out well for me. I've done that with previous ones as well. And so yeah, this fits really well for me. I will mention something that works for me is my difference in row gauge. The pattern row gauge and my row gauge is very different. Pattern row gauge is 28 rounds. The stitch gauge is 24 stitches for 4 inches. And I do get that on a US 4 3.5 millimeter needle, but my row gauge, I am usually at a 32 row or rounds for 4 inches with fingering weight yarn on a US 4. And because my row density is different, so I need more rows to get to 4 inches, it works in my favor because otherwise the armhole depth just ends up way too deep for me. And so this actually works out perfectly. So the armhole depth does not go too deep and is actually super comfortable. My ribbing on the neck, the pattern recommends a US 2 or 2.75 millimeter, but I use a US 3 or 3.25 millimeter. And then because I knit my body length much longer and I don't want it to be too tight, I actually stay with the same needles, which is a US 4 or 3.5 millimeter to do the body ribbing. So I do not go smaller for that part. And yeah, this fits really well. Again, I had less than a gram remaining, so that's super exciting. If you are knitting one for yourself, I would say pay attention to fabric density. Because I plan on knitting these always as underlayers, it doesn't matter too much to me if any part of the fabric is see-through. So because this is a light fingering weight yarn, anywhere that has a lot of negative ease ends up being a little bit see-through. I don't know if I can demonstrate that here very well, but I'm gonna stretch the fabric and I think you can at least kind of see a shadow of me behind you. So that gives you an idea that the fabric is definitely more see-through in areas that are going to have more negative ease. And if that bothers you, I would say ways that you can change the fabric density are change the weight of yarn. So if you use a sport weight yarn, it will fill in the holes more, which I have knit this pattern in sport weight yarn on the same needles with the same gauge, and it works out beautifully. The fabric is much denser. I can actually wear that one on its own if I want to, not as an underlayer and not have any issues with the fabric being see-through. Another option is to go down in needle size and then go up in pattern size by 1. Of course, you need to play with it yourself. I cannot tell you that it's going to necessarily work, but that would be the strategy to do that. So let's say you want a denser fabric, so instead of 24 stitches, maybe you are looking for 25 stitches or 26 stitches. Try it on a US 3. And of course, everybody's tension is different. So what needles give you what gauge will be different for everybody. So you'll just have to play around with it and see, but I'm very happy with this. I feel like it's very drapey. This yarn is very soft next to skin. I've knit another mini mock neck tank using this exact base with this pattern. It might have been my first one, but yeah, I'm very pleased with this. I think it looks so nice. I will probably wear it on a future episode at some point, so you will see it, and I will probably wear it under a jean jacket or under a denim shirt, under a linen shirt, something like that. But I really enjoy how that one feels next to skin, and I really like that color. The last finished project I have to share with you today is a gift that I am knitting for, or that I have knit for my cousin's daughter. And they live in Taiwan, and my parents will be going there at some point, and so it is much more convenient for me to send the gift with them instead of mailing it, because it costs a lot to ship internationally, but also you can never quite be sure that it's going to make it and when it will make it there. So I needed to finish it to send it with my parents, and by then she will be almost 1, but by the time she can wear it, it'll be like, I don't know, another at least 6-ish months from now, because it's very hot in Taiwan. It's a tropical island. So yeah, so I made this a little bit bigger. This is the beloved Bonnet by Tin Can Knits. It is one of my go-to patterns for baby gift knits. It is just the cutest thing. It is a paid-for pattern. This is by Tin Can Knits, and as always, their sizing is a huge range. So it goes from newborn through adult. And this is such a clever pattern. It is so cute. So you start at one end of the I-cord and you knit, 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 increases all the way till you get halfway, and then you do clever short row shaping along the way, and then you have decreases back down, and then you finish at the end of the other I-cord. You have this beautiful garter panel that frames the face as long as sitting along the back of the neck, and then the I-cords tie in the front. It is a DK weight pattern. For the toddler size, it uses approximately 100 yards of DK weight yarn on a US 6 or 4 millimeter needle. I use Daily Wool by Pearl Soho. It's 100% superwash wool. Again, not merino, but also so soft. And I feel like the very tight tight, what am I looking for? Ply? The round yarn is pretty dense and I feel like it will wear really well. It is also super, super soft next to skin. This is a great yarn to use for gifting because it is also machine washable and tumble dry low. I don't usually put them in the dryer, but I guess you could. And actually, a lot of people in Taiwan don't have dryers. They hang dry everything, so that won't be an issue, so it doesn't matter. The colorway I used is golden pink and it's this beautiful peachy pink color. I ended up using 108 yards. I did make my I-cords slightly longer than the pattern, but I say that's pretty close. So 66 grams, 108 yards. This yarn, I feel like if you just looked at the yardage, you would not say it's a DK weight yarn. It comes in 164 yards for 100 grams, but I do think it's a denser yarn. And so the recommendation per the website says to use a US 6 or a US 7 needle, which is a 4 to 4.5 millimeter needle, which this pattern uses, a US 6 4 millimeter needle. I did not feel like it was too hard on my hands or anything like that, but just know that if you just look at the yardage, it seems like it should be like an Aran weight yarn, but I think you can knit it at a worsted weight gauge as well, but it definitely seems a little misleading when you look at the yardage and then look at the needle size that it uses. I was provided this yarn as part of the fall 2024 new product launch by Pearl Soho, and I really like it. I have since bought more of this yarn in another garment that I'm not going to show you today, but I'll show you maybe next time. But yeah, I really like this yarn. I've used it in multiple gift knits since the yarn came out in the fall. But yeah, I'm so excited to give this to my cousin and I cannot wait to see it on her daughter. Okay, that is it for all the finished projects I have to share with you today. I'm going to share with you one work in progress. I have a lot more works in progress than this one, and the majority of them are garments. One of them is almost finished. I'm so excited to share that one with you, but the ribbing on the body hem may take me forever. So that'll come when it comes. But the project I want to share with you is another pair of socks, and this is the March 2025 Colorwork Cuff Club by Summer Lee, knit up in the 2025 March Sock Squad yarn by the Farmer's Daughter Fibers. Are you ready? I love this combination so much. Okay, I'm trying to hold it up here. Ready? Here we are. Oh, aren't they so pretty? So the main yarn is this golden beigey sandy color, and it has these blips of red orange. And the yarn came with a 20 gram mini that was this bright saturated turquoise. Oops. And then I needed another contrast color, so I pulled out my Little Lion Head Knits red orange color in Let's Picnic. I feel like those blips plus that go really well together. The center of the flower is more red, but one of my strategies was that since there are long floats and you do need to catch the floats, if I use a yarn that's similar to the variegation in the main color, when I catch the float, if any of it pokes through, it won't be as visible because it will just blend in with the rest of the variegation on the main yarn. Works pretty well, right? So part of it was for that reason. Part of it was because I just felt like this color combo really, really worked well together. And I really like it. I feel like this is very springy. These are shorter socks. I think I'm following the pattern. Oh, no, I'm not. I cast on for 60 stitches on the top, increased to the stitch count I'm told to increase for the color work, and then did I decrease back down to my stitch count before doing the heel flap and gusset? Nope. I don't think so, because I wanted to make sure I could still fit this over my heel. So then after I did my heel flap in the gusset portion, I went back down to 60 stitches because I know that fits well on my feet. So I am on the foot portion of these socks. I'm going to finish these by the end of the month, and I look forward to wearing them. Let me see, did I change my needle size for the color work? I don't think so. No, I did not change my needle size for the color work. I used a US 1 2.25 millimeter throughout, and because I increased the number of stitches for the color work section, I did not change my needle size there. I did switch to a US 0 or a 2 millimeter needle to complete the heel turn, and I already told you why on the previous pair of socks. But this one I did follow the pattern, I believe, for the heel turn portion. I did not do that new method that I learned, and this is what it looks like on the bottom. So I feel like these will be fine too. I think changing my needle size to a US 0 just for the heel turn portion might be something that I just continue doing for all future socks that have a heel flap gusset and turn. Okay, we have made it to the eats and reads section. I think the only eats part to share is that I will never get tired of looking at freshly baked bread. Freshly baked bread is so pleasing to look at, and when you look at the golden crust, you can smell the aroma. I recently made one that I added black pepper, Parmesan, and garlic to, and I probably could have added more of all those flavors because I felt like I could smell it more than I could taste it, but it was still delicious. So good. Hopefully I'll have a picture of it here on the screen so you can see it as well. On to books. If you enjoy reading middle grade fiction books, I have some to share with you. I will have the picture of the cover here on the screen so you can get an idea of maybe what kind of adventure you are in for, but all of these covers are absolutely beautiful. So yes, those will be on the screen. The first set of books I'd like to share with you is the Thousand Worlds trilogy. These books are by Yoon Ha Lee. The first book is Dragon Pearl, 320 pages, published 2019. Second book is Tiger Honor, 247 pages, published 2022. And the third book is Fox Snare, 248 pages, published 2023. They are very fun reads, science fiction, and inspired by Korean mythology. A new phrase to me was space opera. I did not know about this space opera genre, and I will tell you there's no singing. There's no singing in these books. Space opera refers to like the high drama in space. So there you go. And these books are probably like middle to fast paced, very diverse cast of characters. I love that you get perspectives from different characters in each book. You get themes of family, being part of something bigger. We talk a lot about friendships in these books and what it means to be different. What are expectations that you feel externally and internally? And since these main characters are all, I want to say like 12, 13, 14 age, somewhere in there, there is discussion about what it means to grow up and be more independent while still feeling the need to rely on other people. And I mean, I feel like that can go into adulthood as well, but just to give you some sort of context here. So I loved these books. I thought they were so much fun to read. The characters were lovable and I was invested. I wanted to know what happened, and I read all three of them within a couple of weeks, I think. And I really like them. And I feel like the more perspectives we can get out there, the more stories we can tell, the better for everybody. And it is so exciting that generations now have the option of seeing themselves in these fantasy fiction books, which I feel like was not the case for me growing up in like the 80s and 90s. I just felt like the options for these kind of books was pretty limited. So I'm just so excited that there are so many more options. The next book I wanted to share with you is called Ban This Book by Alan Gratz. And this is the book that I based my socks off of. This book was published in 2017. It is 256 pages. It is a standalone middle grade realistic fiction book. It is fast-paced. I would say it's pretty reflective and inspiring and hopeful and funny. It's a book about books. The kids are so much fun. They're fourth graders. They're so spunky, and there are parts of it are so relatable, either now as an adult or flashbacks to childhood. And I was rooting for them, and there's just something really endearing and heartwarming reading about young children making a difference, young children believing in something and doing something about it, that I feel like as adults we can learn from that. So even though this is fiction, it is very real in topic and in what the students are facing, what the families are facing, and what they do about it. And I just loved it. I loved it. It was a really, really good read. The last book I want to share with you is one I just recently finished. It is called Pahua and the Soul Stealer by Yoon Ha Lee. It is the first book in a series. I don't know if it's duology or trilogy. This was published 2021. It is 432 pages. I actually didn't look to see when the next book was coming out. Yeah, I'm not sure. This book is middle grade fantasy fiction. I would say it's medium paced, definitely adventurous, emotional. It's inspired by Southeast Asian mythology. We have our main character is a lonely Hmong girl who discovers she's a powerful shaman warrior, and the book takes us through that learning process, through that journey that she has and the people that she meets along the way. And I feel like anybody who's ever been outcasted, maybe not outcasted, but anybody who's been made to feel different or like they don't belong or like they're not good enough can find something to relate to in this story. Anybody who has ever brought a school lunch and had other people make fun of it, like those pains are also very real and relatable in this book. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I look forward to picking up the next book. I don't know if it's already published, but I will have to look for it. I really enjoyed this story, and it reminded me of a book I read a while ago. I want to say it's something about you fall down. The sky catches you when you fall down. It is also told from a Hmong perspective, and it is more of a medical context. And I haven't read it in a really long time. I feel like I might have read it in high school, but parts of this book reminded me of that book. I'll flash a picture of that on the screen here as well with the title in case that is something you are interested in. Okay, I think that is all the books I wanted to share with you today. That is 5 different books, all middle grade and fun reads, and I hope that gets you excited about some of them. Now we are into the food for thought. I have 2 stories to share with you. One of them, they're not related at all. One of them is I was driving home from dropping off one of my kids at an after-school event, and I was on like a quieter 2-lane road, so like 2 directions, and the car in front of me all of a sudden was slowing down and then put on their like hazard lights, and I looked around them and I saw like a ton of turkeys crossing the road, which is not unusual. We have a lot of wild turkeys in our area and they're huge. So the turkeys are crossing, we're just sitting there, like it's not a busy road, it's fine. But then another car coming in the opposite direction is not slowing down and honking its horn, and the turkeys are almost done. Like maybe 3 more seconds and they'd be out of the road. But like just blaring its horn through this, well, there's kind of a neighborhood on one side, and like rushes past. I mean, no turkeys were harmed in this scenario. But, you know, they left, and then slowly we left. And I was just thinking about it, like, which car would I rather be? I mean, that answer is kind of obvious, but do I want to be the one that's like hurrying and scaring people out of the way to get where I'm going, versus the one that just waits a few seconds, provides a safe environment for these turkeys to cross, and then go on my way? I mean, you're literally sitting for less than 30 seconds maybe to just let them safely cross the road without a heart attack of a horn blaring, and then you just keep going. I mean, anyway, so that stuck in my head for a while, and I shared the story with my family as well, and I felt like it was, I don't know if good reminder is the right word, but it definitely was something that I was thinking about all the way home. The second food for thought I wanted to share with you has to do with seeing knitters in the wild or makers in the wild. Now, I was thinking about this because, actually, I don't know why I was thinking about this, but to share one story, this happened like years ago. I was stopped in a parking lot by someone who recognized my colorwork sweater. I had no idea who that person was. I wasn't wearing a coat that day, so it must have been like spring or fall or something. And I was wearing this colorwork sweater, and the person like yelled across the parking lot, "Oh, I love your sweater. I recognize the sweater," and was telling me how I did a great job on it. The interaction was probably like 15 seconds, but it was so cool. I was like, oh, they like my sweater. They recognized my sweater. And that was just so fun. And I think that kind of like spurred something in me to compliment strangers on their knit or crocheted or whatever thing they're wearing if I had an inkling that it might be handmade. And even if they didn't make it, like that's fine too, because then they can tell the person who made it for them, like, hey, somebody liked your hat or something like that. I think I was thinking about it because then the other day I was going in the library and someone in front of us was wearing this hat that looked like hand-dyed, like indie yarn, because it was more highly variegated, which tends to be more indie dyed yarn. And it looked like a Musselburgh hat. I don't know for sure because that hat design is not like just for a Musselburgh hat, like other hats can be like that too, but it looked like that. And so I was standing behind them and I had one of my kids with me and I said, "Oh, I love your hat. Did you make it?" And they said they did. And she said, "Oh, are you a knitter too?" And my daughter and I both had on hand knit hats. I don't even remember if we were both wearing Musselburgh hats. It's possible. But I said yes, and I pointed to our hats, and she was like, "Oh, I like your hats." And then the conversation was over, but it was just so much fun. It was like an instant connection with someone I did not know whatsoever, but we all left feeling like great because somebody liked our hats. And so I thought that was really cool. I don't know if you've had any experiences like this. I actually run into makers that I don't know pretty often. I feel like most public spaces I end up seeing somebody knitting, and sometimes I say things that totally embarrass myself, and other times I do a little smoother of a "hey you" type of situation. But yeah, I think it's really fun to see other people making things in the wild, so to speak, and I feel like being recognized in just like a quick 10-second interaction can be super fun. So maybe this is me encouraging you to reach out to somebody if you see some maker in the wild and maybe practice your social skills on how you approach them, because I've definitely had ones that were a little weird. Yeah, I can't remember if I've mentioned them on here before, but anyway, that's all I have to share with you today. We made it to the end. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing things that bring you a little bit of peace, ground you a little bit, excite you a little bit, that you are surrounded by things that inspire you. And if not, I hope you find that inspiration in all sorts of places. And it doesn't have to be related just to crafting. It could be anything. It could be an interaction with somebody like we just talked about. Lots of different ways to be inspired. So yeah, I hope you're doing well, taking good care of yourselves, your loved ones, and your neighbors. Cheers to being creative, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.